This is An Infinite Path, spoken word essays by Niles Heckman, some of which go on to become our documentary short subject films, half of which release freely here through the podcast, all of which can be found through your support at nilesheckman.com. One of the most pinnacle important attitudes one can take in their day-to-day interactions is that of being proactive, meaning acting in advance to deal with an expected difficulty, anticipatory, or controlling a situation by causing something to happen rather than waiting to respond to it after it happens. This is compared to being reactive, meaning tending to be responsive or react to a stimulus, which is basically classified in the difference of the metaphor between being glass half full or glass half empty in one's attitude. Successful people, and success meaning the achievement of something desired, planned, or attempted, have absolutely gotten that way by being proactive the majority of the time, if not all the time. Proactive people lift you up, give off good vibes, and are enjoyable to be around, while spending time with reactionary people is difficult and draining. They are energy vampires who bring their dark, stormy clouds with them everywhere, slamming a shovel in your face and sucking the energy from the room into all their interactions, relationships, family, work, arguing with the internet service guy, or being ticked off at the coffee shop, reacting to their order being messed up. First world problems, yes. Nearly every person, and the word person is used intentionally there, as opposed to woman, man, human, or conscious being, who is reactionary, will always be either crashing and burning, struggling, or at best stagnating in their relationships, family, or work lives. Proactive people rise and reactionary people descend. Reactive people are essentially like characters in a movie, playing out a script. They often resemble powerless victims, having their lives run by external factors. They have little control over their emotions. Instead, their emotions are dictated by someone or something else, by circumstance and their outside environment. They think if only they have treated me better, I could be happy, but, or I have to do this because, or I wish I had the time for that, but. As perfection is an illusion, we certainly are guilty of being reactive from time to time, especially when the going gets rough. Or else we may look out the window to rain and gray clouds and decide it's going to be a miserable day. After being criticized by someone, we consequently feel down for hours or even days afterwards. We have feelings which depend on the results of external events or processes that we feel we have no control over, or are completely outside our sphere of influence, yet we think control our lives. We choose to create habits of wallowing and self-pity, shifting the blame, and feeling powerless. Just as we choose to experience reactionary frustration, anger, boredom, we can choose proactive happiness and elation. It can be hard to accept when told that the situations we find ourselves in and the emotions we experience are largely from our own doing, which they are. It involves a paradigm shift, with us taking responsibility for our current circumstances. A natural reaction is often to resist and argue otherwise, until perhaps eventually a light bulb flicks on. A single massive eureka moment or a series of eureka moments occur, downloading the realization that we are in fact in control, if we want to be. If we can choose to be reactive and negative, controlled by external factors, we can also choose to not be. We don't have to be influenced by unpredictable events or negative emotions of others. Being proactive is not a case of being a robot and having no emotions. Rather, it's yielding more mature control over your emotions. It's making the transition from other people and circumstances being in charge to being in charge of oneself. Instead of shifting the blame elsewhere, we can begin to carry the responsibility. We stop thinking that the external circumstances need to change and realize that we can instead alter ourselves internally. This much better proactive approach is one that deals with things from the inside out. It applies to all sorts of situations. See our essay on big sports fansmanship for our modern-day deconstruction of sports. But a well-known example of the difference between proactive and reactive approach comes from that of the sporting world. Sports teams who spend a lot of time and energy cultivating their internal development programs for players end up with minor league systems that are stocked with blue chip prospects. Then, when those teams need a starting pitcher or power hitter near the trade deadline in baseball, for example, they have assets that they need to trade to other teams who are looking to get ahead of the game by trading away a player who is likely to demand a lot of money on the free agent market. Reactive teams try to take care of all their problems through the free agent market, which means they often spend more resources bringing in talent that has already been developed with a reputation than proactive teams do. To be proactive, one must have an awareness of future conditions so that they can take advantage of the promising situations coming down the pipe. Without this awareness, being proactive is difficult in any situation. In relationships, one can work on their own behavior and focus on being a loving person rather than worrying about the faults of their partner. In the professional working world, one can work on their strengths and contribute as much as they can to the company rather than letting the less talented than you belittling boss who's only in that spot because of their cronyism or nepotism bring you down. Here's some personal examples of these interactions in the chessboard of your everyday spiritual practice. I have family members who live next to a couple on a suburban street. The husband in the couple is nice, enjoyable, and pleasant to be around. The wife is not. She is a very glass half full person, always making negative and reactionary comments about virtually everything. She is a pain in the dick. Thus, these family members of mine enjoy talking to him in standard operating suburban interactions, chatting it up when they see each other while taking out the trash or checking the mail. Yet when they see her, they wave and move to get back into the house as soon as possible, for their goal is to talk to her as little as humanly possible. And probably most other people in her life consciously or unconsciously do the same as well in their interactions with her. Even her own grown children. For when you bring your stormy clouds with you, it makes everyone else in your life want to move away from you, not towards you. The nest becomes empty very intentionally. It's surprising to me that this couple can even stay married, to be honest, because what's her behavior say about him? Another example is a wedding a friend of mine was at, where he was placed at a table with other guests, as you do at a wedding, and two of the other guests he was seated next to was an older couple, probably in their late 70s. During the sit-down, it became quite clear that the husband of this couple was making negative comments about things related to the wedding and their circumstances. First, something to do with the food, then one of the speeches, then something related even to the bride and groom. The wife just sat there quietly, and it was obvious she had been around these energies for decades, not challenging them, because she was too weak in will and character to bring it up, and was not wanting to face an argument or even leave a relationship for fear of being alone that late in her golden years. After an hour or so sitting next to this, a final straw comment from this old-timer was said, and my friend leaned over to this gentleman with razor focus and severeness, saying, "We prefer not to hear any of that negativity at this table tonight, and suggest you get up and go apologize to them, being the bride and groom, right now." The grumpy old-timer threw his napkin down and stormed out, with his weak, obedient wife following him. Later in the evening, during the dancing, the bride went up to my friend and said, "Hey, I heard you had some negative interaction with Alan. What was that about?" And my friend proceeded to say, "Well, Gene, to be honest, he was being very disrespectful of the waitress and this whole table and frankly your special celebration here this evening. So I confronted him on it." And the bride proceeded to reply, "Well done. I've fucking hated that guy for years and only had to invite him to the wedding because of a family requirement." A third and final reactionary example is that of a person who I had the learning experience of working briefly with. A while back, I was brought on by a friend and someone who I respect who had the idea of starting a conscious media company. A bit cliche, yes, which would make videos involving life lessons and conscious practices for living. Even though it sounds a bit new agey and panpipey, the idea and heart of it is up my alley. So I came on board the venture to help them and bring my filmmaking chops to the table. The initial goal was to help elevate it to the ranks of a proper production company, as one might see within the commercial and advertising world of New York and Los Angeles, which have rosters of directors bringing their creative visions and talents to high-end spots, meaning commercials, but instead of it being for commercial crap, it could be for more conscious content. My failing to realize was that this other individual, who was a struggling actor, had already been assigned the role of executive creative director for the venture, which is corporate code for gatekeeper of all creativity. They had a decent experience working with other actors, and like so many actors and so many within the entertainment world, always wanted to direct. As everybody in Hollywood wants to either eventually be an actor, producer, or director, and will do whatever is necessary to claw their way to one of those thrones. The 4 legs of my filmmaking alchemical cauldron are to write, direct, shoot, and edit. So my coming onto the venture as another director was seen as somewhat of a threat to them, and they continually reacted to that. In my living in Los Angeles years, I had directed a couple narrative short films. Both of those taught me something important. The first short taught me to never do computer graphics independently ever again. And the second one taught me I did not resonate with the casting process of actors. The actors I worked with on the films were great, and I certainly have respect for the craft and the art form of acting. But acting as a whole is a fake process, for it is pretending. So I would later move into documentary work because it's just more real, and because of the journalistic, investigative, and more mature aspects which can be shared through the lens and canvas of documentary. That being laid down, we could say at the time of coming onto this venture, my directing skill set was different to theirs, more experienced, and my proactive attitude coming on was we could collaborate together and co-direct together, helping each other become better directors by seeing what we each had more experience in terms of directing, with them having more of a drama and theater background, and me having more of a Hollywood high-end commercial short film-based experience and technical background. Now, the problem with directors, whether they are just want to be directors with a Vimeo profile or Hollywood blockbuster movie names, is they are almost always absolute egomaniacs. They think the entire project is for them and to fulfill their vision, and that everyone else on the production is subservient to them. Entertainment industries are full to the brim with these people who chase champagne dreams and are willing to be very backstabby and cutthroaty to achieve their red carpet dream goals. They are hyper-territorial over status, titles, and other laurel awards, always wanting their name top billing on titles, posters, and credits, oftentimes seen by a film by blah or directed by blah, ego, 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 oftentimes pitching to clients with a rock star narcissistic status. They are elevated to industry-known positions not acquired necessarily by talent, hard work, or certainly originality and style alone, but by their relationship to someone who could elevate them to that place. Even though skill set and talent must be there to have a long-term sustainability and lasting and respected body of work, many of these folks are very hyper-competitive getting projects made. This is one of the reasons I have no interest in playing that game and have matured to the point where I understand that competition and creativity do not thrive together, but instead your creativity flourishes when you structure your life so you have the ability to go your own way. I eventually came to realize while collaborating on this venture that this other director, who wasn't actually a director but someone who wanted to be, mind you, it would be even worse if they were an established working director probably, had already locked up this ego-based mindset. So thus my presence there was always reacted to by them. A final bridge was burned when they had a reactionary micro-meltdown over myself and a co-creator of the venture filming a short piece without them, in which I was the sole director and they were not involved. It was to be the first in a very long series of short-form style videos, and my attitude when creating it is I would do the test and help establish the look for it. And then the other director and I could continue making them going forward, a proactive attitude. Yet they saw absolutely no benefit in it, completely rejected the piece in the outright, and felt we had done something to them. Long story short, they were eventually bought out from the venture because they brought so much reactionary negative drama, perhaps as an actor who wanted to drag others onto their drama stage, that it was just later realized moving forward would just be easier straight up without them. Now, if they had acted proactively and said, wow, they did this piece, Niles did a great job making it under a tight schedule, figured out and overcame some of the challenges I would have been unable to figure out at this point of time on my own, and they showed appreciation for the help and look forward to collaborating, then they would have been brought in to do more of them, and eventually I would have been more than happy to step aside and have them direct the majority of these spots in the series we were doing. So they would have been working away, collaborating with me. I would have been showing them many of my tricks and techniques, and they could be off to the racetracks doing them. And who knows, perhaps it could even be their full-time job to this day. Instead, I would be quite surprised if this person has directed anything at all in the years since this incident occurred, because any of the inevitable obstacles faced would not have been proactively worked through by them, but instead reacted to and overwhelmed by them and allowed to block any progress. This was really a learning experience for me, for I knew they had also had a lot of struggle within their career, air quotes, prior to that point, and I could tell afterwards that this reactionary glass-half-empty behavior and mindset was a major component as to why that was. Perhaps even the pinnacle reason. On the other side of the coin, example-wise, I was recently at a good buddy's wedding, another wedding I know, the merger of one corporation with another within the modern-day falsity of Rome, in which this buddy of mine's best man highlighted in his speech how Chris, who goes by C Money as a bit of an inside joke, can always take the most trying situation and proactively look on the bright side of it, oftentimes saying things such as, "Hey, my car is broken down today. Perhaps the universe will be presenting me with a synchronistic opportunity to meet someone special while I'm hailing an app-based car ride or taxi, or talking to a tow truck driver, or while at the mechanic's waiting room. Or, hey, the wrong book came in the mail. Maybe I should read over it to see if there's something here I was intended to read instead of what I was planning to read. Or, wow, this specific down-and-out person with vomit on their shirt and feces in their pants is being very unhonorable to me today in the big city. Perhaps it's me showing myself that this poor person's life is a reflection of how bad my life could have been, and I so much respect, acknowledge, and appreciate all that I have due to my much easier life than theirs. Thank you for showing me this." As a result of this attitude, C Money, and those are literally things that he said, can see the value in external stimulus no matter how trying it might be, and he is very enjoyable to be around as a result. Being around him is like drinking the dew of a waterfall, rather than having a stale reactionary fart in your face. Thus, his life is absolutely spilling over with fellowship. Becoming more proactive is essentially a practice of mindfulness. Not looking outward towards something like the news, which mainly tracks effects without ever going into the underlying causes, but instead involves you becoming more aware of everything that is going on in the moment around you and what you can directly affect. Just like during a meditation session, during your proactive practice, you'll notice how easy it is to slip into reactionary mode. You'll realize how so many others live their lives in reactive autopilot. So the next time you are in gridlock traffic, perhaps try not saying, "Jesus Christ, fucking traffic," but instead, "Gee, there must be an accident ahead. Aren't I lucky and fortunate, and I appreciate that my family and I were not the ones in that accident." Or, "I'm going up to the mountains this weekend. I know there is going to be traffic, so what a great opportunity for me to listen to my entire new audiobook." Stoic philosophy promoted the idea of concerning yourself only with the things that you could influence, primarily being your thoughts and your actions. Everything else is indifference or not worth worrying about. I would take that another leap and say our astrological birth chart and our esoteric aspects of our ancestry give us some broad brushstrokes as to what will be our strengths and challenges this incarnation around. But our free will, proactive choices, and spiritual development drive our actions and outcomes, and those will aid in the catalyzation of results. The Buddhists think that there are no inherent good or bad events. Only our judgments of those events make them good and bad, and we are free to choose. The quality level of a forum or comment thread is solely determined on folks choosing to leave proactive comments or reactive ones. Trolls and shunners will always leave reactionary teardowns, while proactive ones, with even glass-half-full suggestions on how something was done well, and perhaps even suggestions to make it better, are core to creating a sophisticated community. There are three kinds of people: those who make it happen, those who watch it happen, and those who wonder what happened. In terms of sculpting a life you want, no one has ever gotten anywhere worth respecting or remembering based on being inactive or reactive. For as one of the world's best spiritual ass-kickers, Bruce Lee once said, "Knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do." For proactive action is a foundational behavioral key for all path-walking success.